Maya Alvarez adjusted her black uniform for the third time, smoothing down the crisp white apron that marked her as service staff rather than guest. The Carrington estate stretched before her like something from a magazine, manicured lawns rolling toward cliff edges, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across marble floors, and guests dripping in diamonds and designer labels. The charity gala was in full swing, ostensibly raising money for children's literacy. Though Maya suspected most attendees cared more about being seen than seeing change, she moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, refilling champagne flutes and clearing empty plates. After 2 years of working these events, she'd perfected the art of being present but unnoticed. It was a skill that served her well in her real work, the nonprofit she'd co-founded to help displaced women find housing and employment. Most people here tonight had no idea that the quiet waitress carrying their drinks spent her days writing grant proposals and visiting shelters. "Excuse me, miss," called a sharp voice. Maya turned to see Tiffany Carrington, the host's daughter, surrounded by her usual entourage of trust fund babies and social media influencers. Tiffany was everything Maya wasn't: blonde, bronzed, and bedazzled in a way that screamed money rather than whispered it. "Could you bring us another bottle of the Dom Perignon, the good stuff, not whatever you've been serving?" Maya nodded politely. "Of course, right away." As she walked toward the bar, she heard Tiffany's voice carry behind her. "God, look at her shoes. Are those from Payless?" The group erupted in laughter. Maya's fingers tightened around the silver tray, but she kept walking. She'd heard worse. The bartender, Miguel, caught her eye as she approached. He was one of the few people here who knew about her real work, having volunteered at the shelter where she spent her weekends. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Always am," she replied, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. The comments stung, not because they were accurate. Her shoes were actually quite nice, bought with money she'd earned through careful budgeting, but because they revealed how quickly people made assumptions about worth based on appearances. Maya returned with the champagne, professionally opening the bottle with the soft pop that always impressed guests. As she poured, Tiffany continued her performance for her friends. "I just don't understand why they can't find better help. I mean, look at her hair. When was the last time she saw a salon?" More laughter. Maya's hand remained steady as she filled each glass. "Thank you," said one of the men, James something or other, heir to a hotel fortune. He at least had the decency to make eye contact. "You're very professional." Before Maya could respond, Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Professional, please. She's probably just hoping one of us will notice her and offer her a better job. That's how these people think, isn't it? That we're their ticket to something better?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt every eye in the small circle on her, waiting to see how the help would respond to being put in her place. She could have said nothing, could have simply walked away as she'd been trained to do. Instead, she found herself speaking. "Actually, I'm quite happy with my work," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Both of them." Tiffany raised an eyebrow. "Both of them? Oh, let me guess, you're also an actress waiting tables between auditions? Or maybe you're writing the next great American novel." The group tittered, but Maya simply smiled. "Something like that." She turned to leave, but Tiffany wasn't finished. "Wait, I'm curious now. What's this other job? Uber driver, dog walker?" The cruelty in her voice was becoming more pronounced, encouraged by her audience's laughter. Maya paused, considering her words carefully. She thought about the grant application she'd submitted that morning, the 3 families they'd housed this month, the scholarship program she'd designed for women transitioning out of homelessness. She thought about the letter of recommendation she received from the mayor's office, praising her innovative approach to social services. "I help people find homes," she said simply. "Oh." Tiffany's smile turned vicious. "A real estate agent? How practical." The dismissal in her tone was absolute, as if she'd solved some great mystery and found it disappointingly mundane. The evening progressed with its usual rhythm of small talk and large egos. Maya had nearly forgotten about her encounter with Tiffany's group when disaster struck with the particular cruelty that only accidents can deliver. She was navigating through a cluster of guests near the terrace doors, balancing a tray of fresh champagne flutes. When someone's elbow caught her side, the physics were inevitable. The tray tilted, and golden champagne cascaded in a perfect arc that seemed to slow in the air before finding its target. Tiffany's white Valentino gown, worth more than Maya made in 3 months, was suddenly decorated with spreading stains that caught the light like liquid amber. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of waves against the cliffs below. "Oh my God," Tiffany whispered, staring down at her dress. Then, louder, "Oh my God." Maya immediately set down the tray and grabbed a napkin. "I'm so sorry, let me help." "Don't touch me," Tiffany shrieked, backing away as if Maya carried some contagious disease. "Look what you've done." This dress cost $8,000. The outburst had drawn attention from across the room. Conversations stopped, heads turned, and phones began emerging from purses and pockets. Maya felt the familiar heat of public humiliation rising in her cheeks, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I can pay for the cleaning," she offered, though she knew that $8,000 represented nearly 4 months of her combined income, from waitressing and the non-profit, or replacement if it can't be saved. Tiffany laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You pay for this dress? What are you going to do? Take out a loan?" The crowd around them was growing, drawn by the spectacle. "Do you have any idea who I am? What this dress means? It's not just money, it's art, it's culture. It's something you clearly wouldn't understand." Maya nodded, accepting the verbal blows with the same grace she'd shown earlier. She understood more than Tiffany realized. Understood that the dress was armor, that the cruelty was performance, that the audience was what made this moment unbearable for both of them. "You're right," Maya said quietly. "I don't understand a lot of things about this world." "Exactly." Tiffany seized on this admission like a weapon. "You don't belong here. You don't understand the value of beautiful things, the importance of maintaining standards. You're just ordinary, background noise, the kind of person who serves people like us because that's all you're capable of." The words hit harder than Maya expected, not because they were true, but because they echoed every doubt she'd ever had about herself. Every moment she'd felt like an imposter in her own life. She thought about her apartment with its second-hand furniture and carefully budgeted groceries. She thought about her worn shoes and her practical handbag and her hair that she cut herself to save money for the shelter. "I am ordinary," Maya agreed, and something in her quiet dignity seemed to unsettle Tiffany more than anger would have. "But I don't think that's a bad thing to be." "Well, I think it is," Tiffany snapped. "I think ordinary people should know their place and stay in it. I think they should be grateful for the opportunity to serve their betters and not mess it up by spilling drinks on things they could never afford." The crowd murmured, some uncomfortable with the escalating cruelty, others clearly enjoying the drama. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, some sympathetic, some hungry for spectacle, most simply curious to see how this story would end. "You know what I think?" Tiffany continued, emboldened by her audience. "I think you did this on purpose. I think you're jealous of what I have, of who I am. And this was your pathetic little way of trying to bring me down to your level." Maya opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself against accusations that were as false as they were cruel. But before she could speak, a sound began to build overhead, low at first, then growing steadily louder, a rhythmic thumping that seemed to shake the air itself. Everyone looked up, confused. The sound was getting closer, more intense, drowning out conversation and music alike. Through the tall windows, they could see lights approaching through the darkness, not the soft glow of airplane navigation lights, but the harsh, focused beams of something much closer to the ground. Maya felt a smile tug at the corner of her mouth as recognition dawned. She knew that sound. She knew those lights. And she knew exactly who was about to make an entrance that would render Tiffany's tantrum utterly forgettable. The helicopter was coming in for a landing. The Eurocopter EC-175 touched down on the Carrington Estate's pristine lawn with the precision of a military operation, its rotors whipping the manicured grass into a frenzy and sending cocktail napkins spiraling into the night sky. The aircraft was black as obsidian, sleek and predatory, with none of the ostentatious gold trim or company logos that usually announce the arrival of wealth. This was power that didn't need to advertise itself. The entire gala had migrated toward the windows and terrace doors, champagne glasses forgotten as 300 of Malibu's elite pressed forward. To witness this unprecedented breach of social protocol, helicopters didn't simply land uninvited at private parties, especially not during the charity auction portion of the evening. "Is that a military helicopter?" someone whispered. "Call security," Tiffany hissed, her champagne-stained dress momentarily forgotten in the face of this larger disruption. "This is private property. They can't just—" The rotors were winding down, and in the relative quiet that followed, the helicopter's door opened with a soft mechanical hiss. A figure emerged from the shadows within, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black from head to toe. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about his movements, the way he surveyed the estate with the casual confidence of ownership. Maya felt her heart skip as Alec Ford stepped fully into the light spilling from the mansion's windows. Her husband of 3 years looked exactly as he had when he'd kissed her goodbye that morning. Dark hair slightly tousled, strong jaw set in the expression he wore when he was solving problems. Eyes that could shift from warm honey to cold steel, depending on the situation. Tonight, they were steel. He walked across the lawn with unhurried purpose, ignoring the helicopters behind him and the gawking crowd ahead. Security guards appeared from various points around the estate, but something in Alec's bearing made them hesitate. This wasn't a man who could be simply escorted away. "Ladies and gentlemen," came the amplified voice of Richard Carrington, Tiffany's father and tonight's host. He'd grabbed a microphone from somewhere, clearly trying to regain control of his own event. "I'm not sure who our unexpected guest is," but Alec had reached the terrace steps. He looked up at the crowd of faces pressed against the glass, scanning them with the methodical attention of someone accustomed to processing large amounts of information quickly. When his gaze found Maya, standing frozen beside the champagne-stained Tiffany, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. The terrace doors opened, and he stepped inside. The silence was profound, 300 people holding their collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Alec moved through the crowd, which parted before him like water, until he stood directly in front of Maya. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying easily in the silence. "Traffic was murder." Then he leaned down and kissed her forehead, the gesture so natural and tender that it sent a visible ripple of shock through the assembled guests. When he straightened, he kept one hand on Maya's shoulder, a protective gesture that was also unmistakably possessive. "Alec Ford." Someone breathed from the crowd. "Holy shit, that's Alec Ford." The whispers began immediately, spreading through the room like wildfire. Maya could hear fragments of recognition. "Youngest billionaire. That tech company never does interviews, completely private." Alec turned to address Richard Carrington, who had appeared at his elbow looking equal parts confused and starstruck. "Mr. Carrington, thank you for hosting my wife tonight. I hope she wasn't any trouble." "Your wife?" Richard's voice cracked slightly on the word. "Maya," Alec said, squeezing her shoulder gently. "She's been telling me about the wonderful work you're doing for children's literacy. Very admirable cause." The crowd was pressing closer now, phones appearing from every direction. Maya could see the exact moment when people began recording, could practically hear the social media posts being composed in real time. She felt a familiar urge to disappear, to somehow become invisible again. But Alec's presence beside her made that impossible. Tiffany, who had been struck speechless for perhaps the first time in her adult life, finally found her voice. There must be some mistake. She's the help." Alec's attention shifted to Tiffany, and Maya felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. When her husband used that particular tone, even Fortune 500 CEOs tended to choose their words more carefully. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice perfectly polite and absolutely lethal. "I don't think we've been introduced." "Tiffany Carrington," she stammered, suddenly aware that her earlier cruelty had been witnessed and would soon be judged by someone with considerably more power than she'd ever possessed. Alec nodded thoughtfully, as if filing the name away for future reference. "Ms. Carrington, I couldn't help but notice the lovely decoration on your dress. Champagne, I assume." Maya winced. Of course he'd noticed. Alec noticed everything. It was an accident, Tiffany said quickly, apparently deciding that magnanimity was her best option now. Just a little spill. These things happen. Indeed they do, Alec agreed. Though I hope my wife wasn't blamed for any accidents. She can be quite clumsy when she's thinking about her work. The subtle menace in Alec's words wasn't lost on anyone in the room, least of all Tiffany, whose face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Maya could see the exact moment when the younger woman realized that her earlier cruelty had been witnessed by someone who could actually do something about it. Oh no, Tiffany said quickly, no blame at all. Just one of those things. How gracious of you, Alec replied, and Maya recognized the particular smile he wore when he was about to checkmate an opponent who didn't even realize they were playing chess. Speaking of gracious, Mr. Carrington, I've been admiring your estate. This evening, Richard Carrington straightened, clearly pleased by the compliment from someone whose net worth probably exceeded the GDP of small nations. Thank you, it's been in our family for 3 generations. Beautiful location. Alec continued conversationally. Perfect for what I have in mind, actually. My wife has been looking for a site to expand her foundation's work, something with space for housing, educational facilities, maybe a small conference center for her non-profit conferences. Maya blinked in surprise. This was the first she'd heard of any expansion plans, though she knew better than to contradict her husband in public. When Alec decided to solve a problem, he tended to think several moves ahead. Your wife runs a foundation? Richard asked, looking at Maya with new interest. Several, actually. Alec said proudly. She's quite brilliant at it. The work she's doing with displaced women is groundbreaking. Housing programs, job training, educational initiatives. She's been featured in the Harvard Business Review for her innovative funding models. This was also news to Maya, though she suspected it wouldn't be for long. When Alec decided something should happen, it generally did. In fact, Alec continued, I was thinking of making an offer on this property. It would make an ideal campus for her work. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could practically hear the mental calculations happening around the room. The Carrington estate was worth somewhere north of $50 million, and Alec had just suggested buying it as casually as someone might mention picking up groceries. An offer, Richard's voice was barely a whisper, well above market value, naturally. Alec said, I believe in paying fairly for beautiful things. His gaze flicked meaningfully to Tiffany's stained dress. Though I suppose beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Tiffany looked like she might faint. The woman who had spent the evening treating Maya like dirt was now faced with the possibility that Maya's husband might literally buy her childhood home out from under her. Of course, Alec continued thoughtfully, Maya would need to approve any purchase. She's very particular about the energy of a place, aren't you, darling? Maya found her voice at last. Very particular, she agreed, meeting Tiffany's eyes directly. I like places where people are kind to each other. The message was clear, and Tiffany received it loud and clear. Mrs. Mrs. Ford. She stammered. I wanted to apologize for earlier. I wasn't myself. Apology accepted, Maya said graciously, though they both knew that the damage was already done. Videos of the earlier confrontation were probably already spreading across social media, and now they would be paired with footage of the helicopter landing and Alec's casual mention of buying the estate. Alec checked his watch, a simple steel piece that probably cost more than most cars. We should go, he said to Maya. Early meeting tomorrow with the housing authority. As they walked toward the terrace doors, the crowd parted before them like the Red Sea. Maya could feel hundreds of eyes following their progress, could hear the whispered conversations already beginning. Tomorrow, the story would be everywhere. The humble waitress, who turned out to be married to one of the world's most powerful men. But as they walked toward the helicopter, Maya realized something important. She didn't feel different. The same woman who had accepted Tiffany's cruelty with quiet dignity was the same woman walking beside one of the world's youngest billionaires. Alec's wealth didn't change who she was or what she believed in. The helicopter's rotors were already spinning. Up as they approached, Alec helped her into the cabin, his touch gentle and familiar. As they lifted off, Maya looked down at the estate shrinking below them, the glittering lights, the frozen figures on the terrace, the life she was leaving behind. You didn't have to do that, she said once they were airborne, speaking loudly, enough to be heard over the rotors. Do what? Alec asked innocently. The whole dramatic entrance, the offer on the house, the implied threats. Alec was quiet for a moment, his face serious in the glow of the instrument panel. Maya, I've built companies, negotiated billion-dollar deals, sat across from world leaders, but I've never been prouder of anyone than I was of you tonight, watching. You handle those people with such grace. He reached over and took her hand. You didn't need me to rescue you. You were already winning. Maya squeezed his fingers, thinking about the evening's events. Then why did you come? Because sometimes, Alec said with a smile that was visible even in the darkness, even the strongest people deserve to see their enemies' faces when the cavalry arrives. Below them, the lights of Malibu faded into the distance. Tomorrow, Maya's nonprofit would indeed be flooded with donations, attention, and opportunities she'd never dreamed of. But tonight, she was simply a woman flying home with the man she loved, carrying the quiet satisfaction of knowing that dignity, once earned, could never be taken away. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe provided a helicopter for emphasis.